Hello, coming to you from the epicenter of Great Plains board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, Seismic Bryce Journey. Tied in with a popular recurring Out of the Dust geek list on BoardGameGeek.com, the Out of the Dust podcast is a weekly podcast that is focused on re-exploring games we play that we hadn't previously played in a year or more. Why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. This week on the podcast, episode 34. On the Out of the Dust segment, I'll bring Patrician out of the dust, and a contributor will dust off Bonnie and Clyde. On the reaction segment, I finished going over my predictions for 2019. On the What I've Been Playing segment, I review Gold West. On the Obscure Bryce Games segment, I review Discworld, The Witches. And we wrap up the episode by counting down my top 10 games I'm looking forward to in 2019. This week on Out of the Dust, I'm going to tell you about a game called Patrician, a Michael Schacht design published by Mayfair way back in 2007. I last played it about 7 years ago, which is just an estimate because I don't have any logged plays of it from the 6 years I've been logging plays. But this was an early part of my collection and a frequent play when I was first getting seriously into the hobby. I was originally exposed to it at the first Gen Con I attended with my wife while we were doing the Mayfair Ribbon Quest. This was one of the games we played randomly during the event, and one of the games we used our half-off coupon on to purchase after completing the quest. I recently taught some friends it as an obscure Bryce game demo to great acclaim. This game really holds up. It's quick and elegant and offers a satisfying strategic experience. Its combination of area control and set collection is unique and engaging. I'd honestly forgotten how good this game was and hope to keep it as a more regular part of the rotation. Let's see what a contributor brought out of the dust. Hakan Koenig, username Hacko504, brought the obscure Bonnie and Clyde out of the dust. Bonnie and Clyde is designed by Mike Fitzgerald of Baseball Highlights and Pez the Card Game fame, and was published by Rio Grande in 2009. It's a hand management and set collection game, and actually part of the Mystery Rummy series. Hakan last played it 6 years and 29 days ago, and currently rates it an 8 out of 10. He writes, "It's been a long time since we played any of the Mystery Rummy games. I'll bring out the others ASAP. They're great games that shouldn't be kept on the shelf for this long. I won the game, by the way, by virtue of finding Bonnie in the first hand and Clyde in the other, and I won by a total of 19 points. Thanks for the contribution, Hakan. I'm not familiar with this game, but I'm instantly interested in anything by Mike Fitzgerald because of his tendency to think outside the box. I'm going to keep an eye out for this one and wouldn't mind playing it sometime." Reaction segment time. Last week I started discussing some of my predictions for 2019. I will continue that this week with some predictions concerning shakeups in the current BGG rankings. First, what game currently outside the top 100 do I think will wind up highest ranked at the end of 2019? I've got to go with Wingspan on this one. It's already in the top 300 and it hasn't even received a widespread release yet. I think it easily hits top 50 by the end of the year. An unreleased game I think will end the year in the top 100 is a Kickstarter that should be fulfilling within the next few months. Batman: Gotham City Chronicles. This game is built on an already successful set of mechanics and features an even more popular IP than Conan is. I think the popularity of Batman will catapult Gotham City Chronicles in the top 100 by the end of the year. This might be a risky prediction if the fulfillment gets delayed though. Next, which game currently ranked in the top 50 will be lowest ranked at the end of the year? The popular pick at the Spielcast for this prediction was Android Netrunner, and I tend to agree. The rankings have historically not been kind to LCGs, not currently being supported, but I think Race for the Galaxy has an outside shot at this prediction as well. A massive expansion for its Roll for the Galaxy spin-off combined with a positive reception of its strategy board game spin-off New Frontiers may have enough people reevaluating their current ratings for Roll for the Galaxy to send it spiraling further down the overall rankings. Finally, which games currently in the BGG top 10 will fall out of the top 10 and which game will take their place? When I started writing the script for this episode, I was prepared to make the easy prediction of Twilight Imperium 4 replacing Terra Mystica, but this has already happened in the week between drafting my script and recording this episode, so let's take a look at some other games that could see a drop soon. I also think Great Western Trail will fall out of the top 10. It's currently at number 10, and if even one more game breaks in, this will fall out, so this is an easy choice. Replacing Great Western Trail will be Brass Birmingham. A lot of people forget that the original Brass was a top 10 game for a long time, and is still highly ranked. The fans of that game are almost unanimous that Birmingham is superior, and Birmingham's rise in the rankings has been meteoric. This will also settle comfortably in the top 10 by the end of the year, but I'll go out on a limb now with something more controversial and risky by picking yet another game falling out of the top 10 by the end of the year, Scythe. I think Spirit Island has a shot at taking its place. I'd feel more comfortable with this prediction if Spirit Island's new expansion was going to be released this year, but I'm going to go with this prediction now anyway. Spirit Island's rise has been a lot slower than TI4's or Brass Birmingham's, but rise it has, gradually and steadily. I don't think it's done peaking yet, and though I don't think it will rise any higher than 10 by the end of the year, I think it will get there. So there we have it, my predictions for 2019. We'll see if I'm right. On the What I've Been Playing segment this week, I'm going to tell you about Gold West. Designed by J. Alex Caverd, this is a tasty minstrel game first published in 2015 that has been out of print the last couple of years. It's finally coming back in print now, and I picked up a copy of this resource management game about prospecting in California right away. Here's how it works. Players have a vertical resource track divided into 4 boxes. Whenever a player collects resources, they deposit them in one of these boxes. At the beginning of each of their turns, players take all the resources from one box and deposit them Mancala-style upwards. All the resources that fall off the top of the track are the resources players get to use that turn. Players first spend their copper, silver, and gold metal resources to fill investment cards, which I always think of as orders, each with a fabulous number of points. Players can also spend their metal resources in Boomtown to claim end-of-game bonus scoring opportunities, and on shipping tracks for each of the 3 metals. Finally, players spend their building resources, wood and stone, to build camps and settlements on the hex map board. Each hex is covered by a terrain token that pictures various combinations of resources, and this is where players get resources for later turns, and at the end of the game, players also get bonus points for having adjacently chained together their camps and settlements. The claimed terrain tokens themselves, in turn, get placed on the player board on a terrain track, which scores players various number of points at the end of the game depending on who collected the most tokens of each terrain type. It's an elegant design that is clean and moves at a brisk pace. The decisions are satisfying and the different ways of gaining points appear to be well balanced based on my early plays, but I really like that resource track mechanic. I admire the designer's inspiration for thinking, hey, why not make a linear Mancala? Who says Mancalas have to be rondels? Very cool idea, and it works really well. I taught my wife this one right away, and she really liked it too. I could see this one becoming a fairly regular play throughout the rest of the year. Obscure Bryce Game segment time. This week on the segment, I'm going to tell you about a game that was very hyped at its release, but has since become much more obscure. The Witches, a Discworld game, designed by Martin Wallace and published by his Tree Frog Games company in 2013. The Witches is a semi-cooperative game, and was the second of a planned trilogy of Discworld games to be designed by Martin Wallace. Unfortunately, after the death of Discworld author Terry Pratchett, his estate rescinded their licensing agreement, and the third game was never published. Which is a real shame, because there were a lot of people very excited to see what Wallace was going to come up with for that. The first Discworld game, Ankh-Morpork, is a brilliant design, remains one of the most unique and innovative area control games out there, and has become a grail game for many people. The Witches was less critically well received and has suffered from a lesser reputation in the years since its release. I think it's mainly due to false expectations people had of it being a sequel to Ankh-Morpork instead of the spin-off game it actually was. Because I think The Witches is actually a very interesting game, and my wife and I play it almost as often as Ankh-Morpork. Here's how it works. Players are apprentice witches wandering the Discworld countryside solving various kinds of problems. There are easy problems like curing sick pigs or delivering a baby, and there are hard problems based on various Discworld villains like pesky elves and the Hiver. Each of these problems not only are worth a certain number of victory points at the end of the game, but they also unlock larger hand sizes and die roll modifiers for use during the game. The problems themselves are solved by the roll of 4 dice compared to the problem's difficulty level, which ranges anywhere from 7 to 23, and which might also be increased by crisis modifiers. Players roll 2 dice and then decide which cards they want to play for game text or modifiers. Then they roll the other 2 dice and add all these pips and modifiers together to see if they overcome the problem. Even easy problems can potentially pose difficulties for players, however, as each die has a 0 side replacing the 1 that also gives players a cackle counter, the accumulation of too many of which will lead to earning negative point Black Alice tokens. The game lasts a certain number of turns, and new problems come out at the beginning of each player's turn at randomly selected locations. The crisis counter modifiers come out when the randomly selected location already has a problem tile on it, and if all of those enter play, then the players collectively lose together. Making sure that all the crisis counters don't enter the game is actually the extent of the cooperative element of the game. And that's why The Witches is one of the few semi-cooperative games that I think actually works. I have a theory that semi-cooperative games are largely a failed genre, and that the few games that have made it work are ones that either have a very low focus on one aspect or the other. A game that attempts to equally balance the cooperative and competitive sides is bound to fail. But a game that heavily focuses on one or the other is more likely to succeed. The Legendary series of games is a good example of this. Technically, those are semi-cooperative games, but they work because the competitive aspect is barely present. The Witches works on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's mostly a competitive game, and the cooperative element is barely there. But what really makes this game work for me is the challenge of the hand management system. The hand size starts off very small, and since most of the multi-use cards involve dice mitigation in some form or another, choosing whether to use game text or dice mitigation icons when becomes a very satisfying challenge. Now that it's been out for a while and is certainly more easily attainable than Ankh-Morpork, it's a game I think Terry Pratchett board game fans should give a second look at. Now that I've finished up all of my 2018 countdown lists, I'm going to count down the top 10 games I'm looking forward to in 2019. First, an honorable mention, Batman Gotham City Chronicles. Conan has been a fun success for my family, and they're going to be even more excited about this opportunity to play in the Batman universe. I'm a backer just for the base game because if Conan was any indication. Just the bonus Kickstarter exclusive box is going to be plenty of additional content to keep this game fresh for a long time. Number 10, Escape Plan. New Vital Lacerda games are always exciting, and he's got a couple of upcoming ones. But I don't know if On Mars is actually going to release this year, and I like the theme of Escape Plan more, so I'm more excited for this one anyway. Number 9, Egizia Shifting Sands. Egizia has been an elusive grail game for me for a long time, and I am really looking forward to this Egyptian archaeology-themed game reprint later in the year. Number 8, Welcome to Dino World. This should be fulfilling before too much longer, and I'm excited at the prospect of a dinosaur-themed roll-and-write game. Number 7, Tainted Grail. For some reason, I'm sometimes skeptical of hyped games, and no one can deny there's been a lot of hype for this one. Sometimes that hype backfires if the game doesn't live up to expectations or turns out to be different than what people were expecting. But Tainted Grail does look like the sort of game I'd have fun with solitaire. So after much hemming and hawing, I decided to pull the trigger on an all-in pledge after pledging $1 during the campaign so I could continue weighing the decision. But now that I've done it, I'm fully committed to the impending excitement. Number 6, 1001 Odysseys. One of the first games I ever bought was Star Trek The Adventure Game, a paragraph-style exploration game, and ever since then I've had a nostalgic love for that kind of game. 1001 Odysseys has been on my wishlist for years ever since I first heard about the concept, and I'm very excited that it's finally launched and funded on Kickstarter. This was an insta-back for me. Number 5, Trogdor! I'm ridiculously excited for this game. It just looks like it's going to be pure fun. I can't wait to birdinate the countryside later this year when it fulfills. Trogdor! Number 4, Revolution of 1828. New Stefan Feld games will always appear near the top of this sort of list for me. No one should get excited for a Stefan Feld theme, but I have to admit that the unusual one that